you ever smell something that makes your bones ache with longing? That's what hit me the morning the Grove opened. I was refueling pump 4 at the gas station, watching a pair of crows fight over a chicken bone when it rolled in like someone peeled open the air itself and poured in liquid gold. Barbecue, but not like any barbecue I'd ever had. There was a sweetness to it, like roasted plums, and a spiced tang that danced along the back of my throat. And just like that, the town changed. Lowry, Missouri isn't on any map unless you're already lost. It's 30 miles from the nearest interstate, surrounded by soybean fields and dying pine. You either live here forever or you're trying to escape it. That morning, the entire town must have smelled it too. Even the birds went quiet. The wind stalled. A kid on a skateboard stopped mid-ride, nose twitching like a dog's. "Something's burning," I muttered. "Something's cooking," said Benny from inside the booth, poking his head out. "You smell that? That's like God's ribs, man." Benny was my best friend and unofficial coworker. We both worked the station because it was the only job left unless you wanted to shovel grain or work the poultry plant. He was a skeptic about most things. Ghosts, conspiracies, Bigfoot, but not about food. The boy could sense a good burger through lead walls. "It's coming from Sycamore," I said, narrowing my eyes down the block. And that's when we saw it. The old Slater Hardware building, abandoned since the early 2000s, it wasn't empty anymore. Its boarded windows were gone. In their place, steel-trimmed glass gleamed in the sun. A fresh sign hung above, "The Grove," green letters on black wood, handwritten in elegant, curling script. No grand opening, no flyers, no fanfare, just there, like it had always been. And then the people started showing up. That first day, half the town was inside by lunchtime. Pastor Craig from the Baptist Church, Mr. Peabody and his 3 twitchy daughters. Even Mayor Dana, who hadn't eaten anywhere other than her home since the food poisoning incident at Clara's Cafe in 2012. I didn't go. Not out of pride or fear, I just wasn't hungry. The smell, it called to me, yeah, but it also set my teeth on edge, like hearing your name whispered in an empty room. Benny went though. "You're missing out," he told me, his eyes wide and glassy when he came back. "Dude, it's like your mouth has a religious experience. I ordered steak and it was like perfect. Not under, not over, juicy, tender, like they knew how I wanted it before I said it." "That's creepy," I said. He laughed. "Nah, man, it's genius. They've got this touch-screen ordering system. You just think about what you're craving, and it finds the closest match." "You're kidding." "I'm not. I wanted a chili cheeseburger with extra onion rings. It came out with this. Get this jalapeno aioli drizzle. I didn't even ask for that, but it was exactly what I didn't know I needed." He licked his lips. I watched his tongue flick across them, like a lizard's. "Dude," I said, frowning, "you're bleeding." Benny blinked. A line of red had welled up beneath his left nostril. "Oh," he muttered. "Weird." He wiped it away, shrugged, and walked off humming a tune I didn't recognize. I didn't sleep that night. That smell still lingered in my nose, even with all the windows shut. It was like it lived in the walls now, in my sweat. Every time I blinked, I saw the green cursive of the Grove seared behind my eyelids. The next morning, I found out something else. Jessie Walker had come back to town. She was my ex. She left for college in Oregon 2 years ago and never looked back. We hadn't spoken since the breakup. I only found out she was home because I saw her hauling boxes into her mother's old house on Foxglove Lane. Her beat-up red Jeep was parked sideways across the driveway, same bumper sticker still half peeled. Not all who wander are lost, but some are definitely high. I knocked on her door that afternoon. She answered with a tired look and her hair in a messy bun. "I didn't think you'd come by," she said. I smelled it, I told her. She blinked. The restaurant? I nodded. You eat there yet? Nope. She leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. You? I'm starting to think we're the only ones who haven't. She looked around, then stepped aside. You better come in. Inside her kitchen, she poured us coffee and explained. Her dad had tried to force her to go, not asked, not invited, tried to drag her. And her dad was the most passive man I'd ever met. Once apologized to a squirrel for hitting it with his lawnmower. It wasn't him, she said. His voice was flat, like reading a script. But his eyes, they were crying, I swear, crying even as he tried to pull me toward the car. I leaned in. You think they're, I don't know, brainwashed? She shook her head. Not brainwashed, infected. There's something in the food. She told me about a neighbor who puked up something pink and wriggling, said she buried it behind her garage, and it melted into the soil. Jessie wasn't a nutjob. She was the most logical, evidence-based person I knew. But she looked at me that day like she hadn't slept in a week. We need to find out what they're putting in the food, she said. We need to get inside. I nodded, though every part of me was screaming to run. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. The people of Lowry weren't just eating at the Grove. They were becoming part of it. There's a silence that follows fear, not the screaming kind, the deep, tight one, like the air holds its breath with you. That's what Jessie's kitchen felt like. We huddled by her cracked tile counter, eyes darting to the windows like they might sprout faces. Jessie's cat, a one-eyed orange tabby named Whiskey, kept growling at the back door. We hadn't said anything for maybe 5 minutes. Then Jessie finally spoke, voice low. We need a sample. A sample? I repeated. Of what? Their steak? Their fries? The thing your neighbor puked up? She shook her head, sharp and cold. No, a sample of the raw food. Before it's cooked, I want to see what they're working with before it hits a plate. You want to break into their kitchen? I asked, like she was joking. But she wasn't. Her eyes were glassy and determined. If we don't figure out what this is, no one will. You think the government's gonna show up and investigate a $5 prime rib in some forgotten town in Missouri? She had a point. That night, we roped Benny in. He'd already been acting strange. I wasn't sure if it was just paranoia or if he was changing. He scratched at his arms a lot, said he wasn't sleeping, kept muttering about getting back to the Grove, like it was calling him. But when we asked him to help us sneak in, his eyes lit up. You want to go inside? He asked. Yeah, I want that. He grinned wide enough to make my skin crawl. We waited until the restaurant closed. That was the first red flag. The Grove didn't really close. The sign flipped to closed at midnight, but the lights stayed on until well after 3 a.m. every night. People still went in and out. Sometimes in groups, sometimes alone, dragging large sacks or wheeling carts covered with tarps. Still, we went. We wore black, gloves, masks, the works. Benny picked the lock on the rear entrance like he'd done it before. The back door opened with a hiss of pressure like it was sealed. Inside, the smell hit us like a wave. Rich, fatty, but behind it, something coppery and chemical, something wrong. The kitchen was stainless steel heaven, sleek and spotless, too spotless. Not a single speck of food or grime anywhere, not even on the floor drains. Jessie led the way to the fridge. Benny lagged behind, trailing his fingers along the counters like he was touching a lover. Inside the walk-in fridge, we found the meat. Dozens of sealed black crates stacked on metal shelves, each one labeled in perfect handwriting. Strata. I cracked one open. The meat inside pulsed. Not metaphorically, actually pulsed. Slow rhythmic beats like a heart. It wasn't red either, It was dark violet, veined with glowing blue strands like fiber optics. The smell from it was alive, like it was exhaling into my face. Jessie snapped a picture and sealed it again, trembling. "Get one," she whispered. I reached in with tongs, not touching it directly. As soon as I lifted it, it twitched in my grip. We shoved it into a sample bag and zipped it tight. Then we heard the whisper. At first, I thought it was the ventilation, but it got louder, and it spoke. Not in English, not in any language I knew. It hissed and clicked, rising and falling like a chant. I turned to Benny. His eyes were rolling back. "Benny," I said. "Hey, Benny." He didn't move. His mouth started repeating the words, those same hissing syllables perfectly. Jessie grabbed his arm. "Snap out of it." He blinked once, twice, then shook like a seizure hit him. "I'm fine," he mumbled, "just dizzy." But I saw his eyes, just for a moment. They weren't right. Pupils too wide. The whites too thin, like they'd been pushed back. We got the hell out of there. Back at Jessie's, we sealed the sample in 3 layers of Ziploc bags and stuck it in her old mini freezer out in the garage. She wanted to send it to a contact she had, some ex-professor who owed her a favor. She'd write it up like a food science mystery. No alien stuff yet, not until they had proof. But that night, Benny didn't go home. He stayed in her garage, said he was too tired to drive. We gave him a blanket and a pillow and left him curled up in a lawn chair. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of scraping metal. I looked out the window and saw Benny crouched by the mini freezer, licking the outside of it. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I mean, how could I not be? The image was surreal. Benny, barefoot in the moonlight, squatting in front of the mini freezer like some feral animal. His tongue dragged along the frost-bitten plastic in slow, deliberate strokes. Not hurried, not frantic, worshipful. I rubbed my eyes. Still there. I watched from Jessie's second-story window, unmoving, barely breathing. The cold glow of the garage bulb cast him in strange shadows, elongating his arms, stretching his spine like a puppet tangled in invisible strings. He whispered something between licks. Not words, clicks, like he was talking to the meat. "Jessie," I hissed. "Jessie, wake up." She stirred beside me on the mattress we'd made in the living room. "What time is it?" I didn't answer, just pointed. She got up fast, didn't speak, didn't need to. We crept down the stairs, and by the time we got to the back door, Benny was gone. The freezer lid was open, the plastic bag with the meat ripped. Not cut, not torn. Eaten. We found him 20 minutes later, curled up behind the shed. He was crying. "I didn't mean to," he said, voice muffled. "It was talking to me. It said I was chosen, that I was nearly ready. I just wanted to touch it, just to smell it. But then I tasted it, and God, it was like fire and sugar and home." Jessie knelt beside him. "How much did you eat?" He held up 3 fingers. Chunks. I couldn't stop. His stomach bulged unnaturally beneath his hoodie, like something moved beneath the skin. We brought him inside, put him on the couch. He kept mumbling to himself, half in English, half in those wet, spidery clicks. Jessie wanted to call someone. CDC, FBI. I don't know. But I told her we needed proof first. Real proof. Something we could show. But that wasn't the worst part. Because when I stepped into the garage again, I noticed something. The freezer wasn't empty. There was a trail of slime, thick and black-blue dripping out the side and pooling on the concrete. The meat had been moving. The next morning, Benny was different. Calm. Too calm. He made us breakfast like nothing had happened. Eggs, toast, coffee. all while humming the same strange four-note melody he'd been muttering the day before. He didn't blink much, didn't chew, just smiled. "Feeling better?" Jessie asked carefully. He nodded. "So much better. Like a fever broke." But he didn't eat the eggs, just sat there, watching us eat. When Jessie went to get more napkins, he leaned toward me, real close. "They're not bad," he whispered. "They just want to live. We can help them, you know. Be something more, something pure." I didn't answer. I just stared into my coffee and realized I wasn't thirsty anymore. I never wanted to eat again. Jessie's professor friend finally got back to her that afternoon. She'd overnighted a scrap of the pulsing meat she'd cut off before the rest vanished, and he ran it through some high-end testing equipment. The email said, "This is not animal tissue. It's not fungal or plant-based either. It contains unknown proteins, synthetic structures, and most disturbing, a lattice of neural fibers similar to human brain matter. Whatever this is, it's thinking." There was an attachment. Photos under high magnification. The last image made Jessie throw up. Tiny structures inside the meat, spiral-shaped, threaded with bioluminescent pulses, not cells, not parasites. Eggs. Dozens of them. Inside everyone who ate it. That night, we heard the town square bells ring. It was 1:37 a.m. No holiday, no festival, just bells. We looked out Jessie's bedroom window and saw people walking in the streets. Hundreds of them, marching toward the grove. All of them humming. All of them barefoot. Eyes wide. Mouths slightly open. There's something more terrifying than monsters. Organization. When a creature hunts you, it's primal, instinct. But when something plans, when it coordinates, that's when you realize it's not just trying to feed. It's trying to take over. That's what it felt like, watching the people of Lowry march barefoot through the dark. No shouting, no chaos, no struggle, just unity. Peaceful, horrible unity. Jessie and I crouched behind her window, silent, watching as people we'd known our whole lives paraded in single file toward the grove. Men, women, even children. And Benny? He was gone. His blanket was crumpled on the couch. His shoes were still there. The front door hung slightly open, as if he hadn't even needed it. I stared at the empty doorway, feeling a quiet truth settle in my gut. He'd answered a call, and we hadn't heard it. We followed the crowd on foot, sticking to the shadows. By the time we reached Sycamore Street, the square was full. Every parking lot, every sidewalk. People stood shoulder to shoulder, unmoving, eyes fixed on the restaurant's front door. Then the doors opened. 3 figures stepped out. All wore the green and black server uniforms of the Grove, but something was wrong with how they moved. Too smooth, limbs too long, faces stretched in a subtle, uncanny way. Like masks made just slightly too tight over something else. They moved with unnatural grace, like they weren't walking on the ground but just above it. One raised its hand. The crowd dropped to their knees as one. Jessie grabbed my arm. "This is a ceremony." "I thought they were just infecting people slowly," I whispered. "Like a rollout." She shook her head. "They're escalating. This is a conversion." The figure in front began to speak. Not aloud, at least not in any way that made sound. But I heard it. Inside. A thrum behind the eyes. A voice not made for human ears but translated somehow into emotion. "Brood stage 1 has completed. Vessels are fertile. Hosts are willing. They have fed. They are prepared." Another figure stepped forward and lifted something from beneath its cloak. A small, writhing creature. 6 limbs, translucent skin, and a single eye that opened in the crowd's direction, glowing with pulsing white light. It raised its head toward the sky and screamed. A frequency, not a sound. A vibration that cracked my molars and filled my skull with burning static. People in the crowd convulsed, but not in pain. In rapture. Their mouths opened. Something dark spilled from their throats. Not blood. Something like smoke, but heavier. Something that fell upward, toward the stars. The seed has taken. The hive is ready. Jessie grabbed my wrist. We need to leave, now. But it was too late. Benny stepped into the square. He wasn't wearing his hoodie anymore. Just a white shirt stained with dark blue fluid that glowed faintly beneath his skin. His eyes were gone. I don't mean damaged, I mean gone. Hollow sockets filled with black shimmering movement. Something inside him blinked. The lead figure reached out and touched Benny's head. He collapsed onto the stone and split open. Not like a wound, like a cocoon. From inside crawled something tall, lean, still vaguely Benny but stretched, elongated, smooth where joints should be, no mouth, just a slit across its chest that opened and closed with breath. It stood. The crowd cheered, no sound but their mouths moved in perfect synchronization. Jessie grabbed my shoulder. They're birthing new ones, not turning people into hosts, into them. Benny raised both arms toward the sky and released a pulse of vibrating light. It hit me like a punch to the soul. And in that moment, I almost stepped forward. I wanted to. The pull was overwhelming, like gravity from a second sun. But Jessie yanked me back, slapped me across the face. "Focus!" she screamed. "Don't look!" We turned and ran. Back at her house, we sealed every door and window, pulled blackout curtains, turned off every light. Jessie's hands wouldn't stop shaking. "They're converting people," she whispered, "and once they hit critical mass, they'll bring the rest of their kind through." I said nothing, because my thoughts were racing somewhere worse. The vibrations, the energy, the light. It wasn't just to convert. They were signaling, calling something bigger. Later that night, I opened my phone and scanned the amateur radio forums. One post stood out. Subject: weird interference in southern Missouri. Something's broadcasting from a rural node at 23.4 hertz. It's pulsing every 6 minutes. Whatever it is, it's not local and it's not human. You ever stare at something so long, you start to feel it staring back. That's what it felt like looking at the broadcast map. Jessie had pulled it up on her laptop, some underground radio surveillance forum frequented by conspiracy types, ham radio junkies, and people who still wore tinfoil hats, but only half ironically. The signal was real. Origin: Lowry, Missouri. Frequency: 23.4 hertz. Cycle: every 6 minutes. Pattern: 5 pulses, 1 long, then silence, repeat. The thread was lit up with theories. SETI? HARP? Spy satellites? Ghosts? One user claimed it matched ancient Mayan drum codes used in fertility rites. Another insisted it mirrored the brainwave patterns of deep REM sleep. But the one that chilled me to my core? This is an activation frequency, whoever they're calling. It's not here yet, but it's on the way. Jessie slammed the laptop shut. Her eyes were sunken, wild. "We have to destroy the relay," she said. "Whatever's sending that signal. If we stop it, maybe we stop the conversion." I wanted to argue. I wanted to go back to before any of this started. Back to when the worst thing we had to worry about was gas prices and whether the Cardinals would make playoffs. But that world was gone. I nodded. We started planning. There was only one place in town high enough and isolated enough to serve as a broadcast hub. The old Marlow water tower just outside the soybean fields. It hadn't been operational in years. Rusty. Covered in graffiti. but from its elevation, it could easily mask a signal in the white noise of rural EM activity. And according to town records, no one owned it anymore. Perfect place to hide alien tech. We waited until after sunset. Jesse packed a backpack with bolt cutters, flares, and a crowbar. I brought my dad's old hunting rifle. Not because I thought it would work on these things, but because holding it made me feel less powerless. As we walked down the dirt road toward the tower, the night around us seemed too quiet. Even the crickets had stopped, like they were holding their breath. We found the tower, but it had changed. At the top, faint blue lights pulsed in rhythm, same frequency as the radio chatter. They weren't bulbs, they were organic, like jellyfish suckers growing along the steel lattice. They expanded and contracted with every pulse, feeding something deeper inside. We climbed. It was stupid, reckless, but there was no time to think. Each rung of the ladder burned cold. The air around the structure buzzed with invisible static. My fillings ached, my vision blurred. Jessie reached the platform first and froze. "What is it?" I hissed. She didn't answer. I climbed up beside her, and my blood turned to ice. In the center of the tower, suspended in a web of fleshy tendrils and black tubing, was a living machine. It pulsed with wet light. Tubes ran from it down into the structure. Inside the mass, shapes twitched and moved, like hearts, lungs, eyes. It wasn't just broadcasting. It was growing. Jessie stepped forward with the crowbar. "Wait," I said. Too late. She swung. Metal crunched. The whole thing screamed. A soundless, psychic wail that exploded behind my eyes like lightning. My nose gushed blood. I fell to my knees. And from below we heard something climbing. It wasn't human. It moved too fast. Metal creaked, groaned. One of the servers from the grove, or whatever it really was, pulled itself onto the platform. Its skin shimmered between shapes: man, woman, beast, insect. It didn't speak. It lunged. Jessie drove the crowbar into its side, but it barely flinched. It backhanded her across the platform. She skidded toward the edge, nearly toppling over. I raised the rifle. Fired. Once. Twice. The thing shuddered, but didn't fall. Black fluid sprayed, hissing as it hit the floor. It turned to me, seething, and I saw its face flicker between forms. Benny's mother, my childhood teacher, the mailman, as if it wore every memory it could steal. Then Jessie jammed the flare into the damaged machine. The fire caught instantly. Blue turned red. The creature screamed, this time audibly, a screech that rattled the bolts in the steel. It thrashed as the webbing around the transmitter ignited. Jessie grabbed my arm. "Jump!" We didn't wait. We leapt off the platform and landed hard in the soy field below, rolling through dirt and stems. Behind us, the tower exploded in a blossom of red flame and black smoke. The signal was gone. We limped back into town just before sunrise. No marching, no humming, no lights. Just quiet. A wrong quiet. Because when we got to Sycamore Street, the grove was gone. Not boarded up. Gone. As if it had never been there. In its place, just a cracked concrete lot, overgrown, dead weeds pushing through the seams. We looked at each other, breathless. Jessie knelt and touched the ground. Still warm. The lot was warm for hours after sunrise. Even as the light chased the shadows from Sycamore Street and the birds returned to their perches, the broken pavement where the grove had stood radiated a residual heat, like a stove turned off, but not yet cold. Jessie and I sat on the curb staring at the emptiness. We didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, she broke the silence. They didn't run. No, they relocated. I nodded slowly. Or retreated. She tilted her head. To where? That was the question no one could answer. When we made it back to her house, Benny was sitting on the couch. He looked normal. No black fluid, no hollow eyes, no strange clicks or whispers. He was wearing a clean t-shirt and had a blanket over his lap. He held a mug of coffee and was watching The Price is Right. He turned when we entered. "Hey," he said, "where were you guys?" Jessie froze. "Benny?" He smiled. "Yeah?" I stepped closer, cautious. "Do you remember anything?" He furrowed his brow. "I remember the restaurant, the food. I remember feeling happy, then sick, then nothing." Jessie set her bag down slowly. "You've been gone for days." He blinked. "No, I've been right here." She sat across from him. "You tried to feed us meat that wasn't meat. You joined something. You changed." Benny laughed nervously. "You guys sound insane." But the laugh was off, too measured, too even, like he was trying on the sound instead of feeling it. That night, I found him in the bathroom, shirtless, staring into the mirror. I watched through the cracked door as he pressed his fingers into his chest, just below the collarbone, pressing until the skin parted. Not split, not cut. Parted, as if there were a zipper of flesh waiting for his touch. Inside I saw something move, a glimmer of light. I stepped back, my hand over my mouth. The door creaked, and Benny looked over his shoulder. "Hey," he said softly. "It's okay. It doesn't hurt." I shut the door without answering. Jessie and I argued in hushed whispers in the garage. "He's still infected," she hissed. "He's not even Benny anymore." "I know." "Then why are we keeping him here?" "Because he hasn't tried to kill us. Because maybe, just maybe, he doesn't know he's changing." Her jaw tightened. "Or he's waiting." I didn't disagree. But what if we were wrong? What if he wasn't gone yet? What if we had one last chance? The next day, Benny asked us for help. He said there was a noise in his head, a clicking, like tapping glass underwater. He couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. He said it sounded like a countdown. "Something's coming," he told us. "I don't know what, but it's big, and I think I'm its anchor." We didn't know what he meant. Not yet. That night, I found Jessie hunched over her laptop again. She'd gone back to the forums, scouring signal logs, radio intercepts, geomagnetic pulse activity. It all pointed to one thing. Lowry wasn't the only town. There were others. Remote places, populations under 2,000, isolated by geography, places where the Grove or something like it had popped up and vanished just as fast. Some of the names had been scratched out in public maps, erased, as if they'd never existed. Jessie looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. "They're setting up nodes," she whispered. "Points in a global web, like roots in soil. They test the infection, the food, the conversion, then move to the next." "And we broke one," I said. She nodded, "which means they'll come back stronger." I glanced toward the living room, where Benny sat cross-legged, whispering to himself. Not in English. In their language. At 3:47 a.m., Benny began to scream. Jessie and I ran into the room. He was curled up on the floor, convulsing. Blood seeped from his ears. His eyes flickered between human and other. His spine arched. His chest glowed. And then he spoke, in a voice that wasn't his. "The breach is open. The signal failed. The node has collapsed. We require a new host. The vessel is insufficient. Terminate." Then he imploded. Not exploded, imploded. like his body turned inward, folding in on itself, crushing bone and tissue into a singular wet point that hissed and vanished, leaving nothing. No blood. No body. Just the echo of that alien frequency vibrating through the floorboards. Jessie didn't speak for hours. We sat in silence, staring at the place he had been. Eventually, she said what we were both thinking. "They don't need a machine anymore," she whispered. I nodded, numb. "They're using people." Grief is a funny thing when the world is ending. You don't have time to feel it all at once. You ration it like canned soup in a bomb shelter, just enough to remind you you're human, but not so much that it kills you. That's how it felt after Benny vanished. Not died. Vanished. We didn't bury him. We couldn't. There was nothing to bury. Just a rug soaked in something that refused to dry, a low vibration in the air, and the awful certainty that something had watched him go and was still watching us. Jessie stayed in the garage most days, poring over signal records and maps. She stopped talking much. Her notebook filled up with sketches of nodes, strange symbols, and timestamps. I spent my time patrolling Sycamore Street. The lot where the grove had been remained warm for 7 more days. Then, one morning, it went ice cold. And I found something. A napkin. Folded neatly, pressed between 2 broken slabs of concrete. It wasn't dusty. No dew. No dirt. Fresh. In neat green ink it read, "We remember you. You are not forgotten." Underneath a single word in that alien script I'd seen growing inside Benny's chest. I didn't understand what it said, but I felt it in my teeth. That night, Jessie called me into the garage. She didn't look up from her notes. "They've activated a new node," she said, "in Arizona, remote town, mining settlement, 1 road in, 1 out, same signature frequency, exact same pulse rate." I leaned over her shoulder. "The Grove again?" She shook her head. "No name this time, just a white building. No sign, no windows." My stomach turned. "They're getting better at hiding." She nodded. "And faster. They're learning from us." I sat down beside her, exhausted. "They're going to keep going," I said. "We can't stop everyone." Jessie didn't answer for a long time. Then she pulled something from her desk drawer. A vial. Inside was a sliver of strata meat. Frozen. Preserved. It pulsed faintly, even through the glass. "I didn't destroy all of it," she admitted quietly. "I kept this. I thought maybe we could study it." I stared at the tiny thing. It twitched once, like it knew I was looking. "They can't be killed easily," I said. "Not really." "No, but they can be understood." Jessie turned to me then. Her eyes were clear, fierce. "What if we didn't fight them the same way? What if we infected ourselves just enough to understand them, to hear what they hear?" I recoiled. "You want to become one of them?" "No, I want to trick them. We go in, undercover, use their own biology against them." "That's insane." "Is it?" she asked. "Or is it the only way we win?" That night, I dreamed of a white place. No walls, no floor, just light. And in the middle, a table. On it, a plate. On the plate, a meal that shifted shape every time I blinked. A cheeseburger, a bleeding heart, a writhing infant, a golden apple, a spiral of flesh wrapped around bone, and something behind me watching, waiting for me to eat. I woke gasping. Jessie was already dressed. She had packed bags, 1 for each of us, maps, water, cash, knives, her laptop. "We're going to Arizona," she said. I blinked. "We're not ready." "We weren't ready last time either." She handed me the vial. It was warmer now, pulsing faster. I stared into the glass and felt it look back. Just a sliver, she said. Just enough to remember. I nodded, because I knew what she meant. We weren't just going to stop them. We were going to become the one thing they feared. The ones that remember. The ones that fight back. The road to Arizona stretched out like a scar across the desert. We drove in silence, a rust-bitten pickup with broken AC and a duct-taped GPS, Jesse at the wheel, me in the passenger seat with a cooler on my lap. Inside the cooler, ice packs and a metal lockbox. Inside the lockbox, the vial. The meat wasn't just pulsing anymore. It was vibrating, like a tuning fork struck in the center of a dead world. I kept checking to make sure it hadn't cracked through the glass. It hadn't, not yet. But I swear to God, it was growing. The town wasn't on the map. Jesse found it using satellite overlays, comparing old government land surveys to terrain patterns that had been lost to time. We passed a sign half swallowed by sand. Welcome to Afton Ridge. Established 1871. Population unknown. We rolled into town just after sunset. No streetlights. No movement. Just a pale white building at the end of the main road. Box-shaped, smooth, seamless. No doors, no windows, no address. It sat there like a tooth in the desert. Jesse parked 3 blocks away, killed the engine. Neither of us spoke. The air smelled wrong, sterile, like bleach and boiled sugar. Then Jesse opened the cooler. The vial was glowing. We stayed in a long abandoned motel that night, Afton Ridge Inn. 1 bed, dust so thick it muffled your footsteps. We didn't unpack. Just sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at the vial. Do you think it's sentient? I asked. Jesse nodded. I think it always was. Will it know what we're doing? She hesitated. Maybe. Will it fight back? She didn't answer. Instead, she opened a black case and pulled out 2 syringes. I stared at them. You actually prepped it. She nodded again. Filtered, dosed, 1 microshard per injection, enough to sink, not bond. I held out my arm. Because at that point, it wasn't courage. It was resolve. The pain was instant. Not sharp, not burning, something internal, like all my organs suddenly remembered what it felt like to scream. My vision pulsed. I heard music. Low, mechanical. Alien. Jessie injected herself next. Her jaw clenched. Eyes rolled. A line of blood trickled from her right ear. Then she gasped. And we both felt it. The network. It wasn't a place. It was shared memory. An ecosystem of experience. A living internet of emotion, hunger, dominance. We saw flashes. Eggs blooming in human hosts beneath restaurant tiles. Vats of nutrient gel beneath shopping malls. Hosts whispering to sleeping neighbors as their eyes clicked open in the dark. And in the center of it all, something vast. A consciousness behind the parasites. Not a queen, not a god. A root. The first. The seed. And it was watching us now. We woke gasping, drenched in sweat. The vial was empty. Its contents had melted through the glass, then reabsorbed into us. Jessie held her stomach. I can still hear it. So can I. We didn't need words. The plan had changed. We weren't going to infiltrate. We were going to descend, right into the mouth of the beast. We approached the building at dawn. The sky bled pink, dust hung like fog. As we stepped closer, the walls of the structure shivered, a ripple that ran from base to roof. Then a door formed in the wall. Seamless metal, peeled back like fruit skin. Inside, darkness. No smell. No air. Just invitation. Jessie stepped first. I followed. The interior was alive. Walls of pulsating membrane, soft thudding sounds like distant heartbeats. Lights blinked in sequences we somehow understood, even without seeing them before. We walked through corridors of fleshy bone and bone-shaped steel. And then we reached it. The core. A massive floating organ, veined, covered in twitching eyes, spirals of data scrolled across its surface in that alien script we couldn't read but felt. And behind it, a voice. You are early. You are reckless. You are aware. It wasn't sound. It was memory, spoken through the language of the parasite now curling through our veins. You are not host. You are not prey. You are interference. Jessie stepped forward. No, she said. We are evolution. She pulled the second vial from her pocket. The one I hadn't known she kept. Inside, something black and burning. The root reacted. The lights dimmed. The walls shivered. Do not defile the seed. Jessie threw the vial. The explosion wasn't fire. It was emotion. Rage, fear, memory. A million voices crying out as one. The root split, not in half, but apart, shattered into concepts, not flesh. We ran. Corridors collapsed behind us. Organic metal screamed as it melted. And when we burst through the exit, the building caved inward with a deafening howl, then vanished. No dust. No wreckage. Just sand and silence. That night, back at the motel, Jessie cried for the first time. Not out of sadness. Out of release. We had struck the core of a node. But not node 0. That was still out there. Waiting. Feeding. Planning. We knew what we were now. Not survivors. Not victims. Not even human. We were bridges. And the war had only just begun. The days after the node collapse bled together like oil and water, thick, sour, and clinging to everything. We didn't leave the motel for 3 full days. Jessie barely ate. I didn't sleep. Something about the injection, something about being in that place changed us. Physically, we were fine. Our vitals were normal, our skin intact. But inside? Inside was quiet. Too quiet. Like a radio left on after the song ends, waiting for a voice to return. The hive had gone dark. But the silence wasn't peace. It was a pause, a breath before the next word. On the 4th morning, I woke up to find Jessie hunched over the sink, bleeding into the motel faucet. Not blood exactly, more like a black iridescent sludge. It spiraled through the water like oil slicks refusing to mix. She didn't scream. She just stared into the mirror, muttering, "It's trying to grow again." We left Arizona that night. No destination. No maps. Just movement. The root knew our names now. It knew our faces, our memories, our limits. It would adapt. And if it couldn't stop us through mind control or assimilation, it would try something worse. We needed to find the beginning. The original place. The first spore. The root of all things. It was Jessie who found the clue, buried deep in the satellite logs. A pulse signature like the others, but older, years older, decades maybe. The location, a stretch of pine wilderness in northern Canada. No roads, no towns, no records. Just a wide burned scar on the earth, circled in satellite data but never labeled. We booked a flight, then drove, then hiked. By the third day, we stopped speaking. The forest was too still. Every bird cry echoed too long. The trees leaned closer than they should. And then we found it. A hole. Not a cave. Not a tunnel. A perfect circle in the forest floor, 20 feet across, black as obsidian. Around it, dead things. Animals. Birds. Insects. Even moss refused to grow within 30 feet. It reeked of ozone and rotten fruit. Jessie knelt by the edge, running her fingers over the rim. "It's not just old," she whispered. "It's primordial." I shone a flashlight into the darkness. It didn't hit anything. No bottom. Just more dark. Something pulsed below. Far, far below. Boom. Boom. Like a heartbeat big enough to shake the soil. I stepped back. We shouldn't be here. Jessie's eyes were glassy. "I think we have to be here." That night I dreamed of a garden. Black flowers. Screaming roots. Children with hollow eyes planting meat into the mouths of their parents. A voice echoed through it all. All life is consumption. All hunger is holy. I woke up screaming. Jessie was gone. I found her at the edge of the pit. Naked, covered in that iridescent sludge. Whispering in a language that wasn't hers. When I touched her shoulder, she jerked away. "I saw it," she said. "The root." I swallowed. "What did it show you?" She turned slowly. And for a split second, just one terrible moment, she wasn't Jessie. Her face flickered like static. Her mouth split at the sides. Her eyes became small, black wells. Then she blinked, and it was gone. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I think it saw me back. We should have left. We tried to leave, but the forest didn't let us. Every trail twisted, every path looped. Our GPS spun in circles, displaying symbols instead of coordinates. We were caught in a biomechanical loop, a living maze designed to contain, or maybe to prepare." On the sixth night, the stars changed. Not figuratively. Literally. The constellations shifted, Polaris dimmed, a new pattern emerged overhead, spirals within spirals, matching the alien glyphs we'd seen etched in the nodes. And then we heard it. The call. A low, resonant frequency. Not sound. Not words. A summons. From below. The root was waking. Jessie clutched her skull and screamed. Blood poured from her ears. Her pupils vanished. Then she said, "It wants to come through." I grabbed her. "Come through what?" She looked at me, eyes dead and shining. "Through me." I had seen Jessie terrified before. I'd seen her wounded, angry, hollowed out by grief, but never empty. That's what she was now, as if something had scooped her soul out and filled the cavity with a stranger. She sat at the edge of the pit, knees drawn to her chest, rocking slightly. Her skin was pale and veined with a faint shimmer beneath the surface. Not bruises, not veins. Roots. They pulsed. "You need to fight it," I said, kneeling beside her. She didn't look at me. "I'm already in," she whispered. "It just hasn't finished blooming." I clenched my fists. "Then we burn it out. We end this. Right now." She turned her head slowly, and I flinched. Her eyes, once sharp and storm-colored, were completely black. Not just the iris. The entire orb. But she wasn't attacking. Not yet. She was crying. "They're using me," she said, "but I'm still here, for now." A crack opened in the earth behind her. No tremor, no warning. Just a slow rending, like the land itself was splitting a scar that had never healed. From that gap, A glow began to rise, faint, golden, and wet. The air turned thick, electric. The root was close. Jessie grabbed my wrist. Her hand was ice cold, her grip inhumanly strong. "Listen to me," she said, voice shaking. "They've grown past needing physical form. The root evolved. It's learned how to exist in memory, in thought. If I become the vessel, it wins. It broadcasts itself through me, like a human radio tower." I nodded, swallowing the rising panic. "What do we do?" Her eyes flickered, a faint trace of humanity returning. "There's a core below, a seed brain. The first, the source. We destroy it, and the system collapses, not forever, but long enough to warn the world." I stared at the opening behind her. The glow was growing brighter now, a golden sac, breathing slowly just beneath the surface, wrapped in tendrils, covered in runes. A living heart. And then I heard it. A voice, not hers. "You were always meant to serve. Let go, feed the hunger. Join us." I stood up. "No." Jessie's mouth opened, not in speech, but in a howl. A sharp screech burst from her lips, shattering every thought in my skull. I staggered back. And then she split. Not down the middle, not gore, not bone. She peeled open like a flower made of flesh and light. Inside, not organs. Inside, a tunnel. An entryway, leading straight down into the root. And it was inviting me. I stepped through. I don't know why. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was the last thing that still felt like choice. I walked into her, and I fell. Down, 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 through layers of thought, memory, devotion. I saw them all. The towns, the converted, the children born with black eyes and no breath, the restaurants, the fields, the black-veined meat, and at the center, wrapped in a cocoon of ancient bone and blood, the root. It was massive. Not a creature. A civilization. A consciousness stacked upon itself, layer after layer of minds absorbed and preserved in a writhing biomass. And it noticed me. "You cannot kill what has already consumed you." I screamed, fired the flare gun I had hidden in my belt. It pierced the root's surface, and it howled. The scream shattered my vision. Blood poured from my nose, my ears, my eyes. But I fired again, and again, until the golden membrane burst. The cavern collapsed, not in rocks but in reality. The vision folded inward. The thoughts dissolved. The tunnel of flesh retracted, and I was vomited back into the forest, gasping, naked, screaming. Jessie was gone. The hole was gone. Just earth, blackened, and the stars were back where they belonged. I waited for days, for weeks. No sign of her. No whispers. The voices were silent, but every so often when I close my eyes, I still see her, standing at the edge of the root, looking back at me, smiling. They never came back. Not like before, anyway. No pulsing buildings. No shape-shifting waiters. No whispering streets or $5 steak specials. But silence? The silence stayed. And it changed me. I left the forest weeks ago, walked barefoot for miles until a ranger found me half-starved and raving under a broken sky. They said there was no sign of a hole, no blackened pit, no organic residue, no Jessie. Just me. Alone. And that's how it's been since. They kept me in a psych facility in Colorado for a while. Off the books. Special unit. No visitors. I told them everything. About the grove, the food, the parasites, the nodes. About Jessie. About the route. They smiled politely, took notes, treated me like a man describing a very long, very sad hallucination. But every once in a while, just often enough to make me certain, I'd catch a flicker of something else behind their eyes. That same glassy stillness, that hum of thought not quite human, like they were waiting for me to finish, like they already knew. When they released me, they told me I was free to go rebuild my life. But what life? Lowry doesn't exist anymore. Literally. I tried going back once, tried driving the same dusty road home, the same turn off Route 19. But the sign was gone. So was the town. Just trees. Endless, empty trees. Like it had all been scrubbed clean, erased. And no one remembers it. Not even the state maps. Not even the locals in neighboring towns. Lowry's become a ghost without a grave. Just like Jessie. Some nights, I still hear her voice, calling from the far end of sleep. Not begging, not screaming, just whispering, "I'm still down here. You didn't destroy it, you just closed the door." And I believe her, because the silence hasn't gone. It's changed shape. Now it hums in the gaps between city noise. It's in the tremor of streetlights when no one's watching. In the breath of air vents when your house is empty. It waits in restaurant kitchens at night. In food court freezers. In test markets and secret menus, and the new place on 8th Street that smells too good for how cheap it is. They're back. Not in one place, but everywhere. Distributed. Cellular. Waiting for the right time to wake up again. And me? I'm the canary in the coal mine. I still feel it when something new blooms. The root left a piece of itself inside me. A splinter of memory. A signal. And when a new node goes live, I hear the echo in my bones like a tuning fork in hell. And I go. Town to town. One step ahead of them. Not to warn anyone. No one ever listens. But to watch. To witness. To remember. Because I'm not the hero. Jessie was. I'm just the last one who still knows what happened. The last one who didn't eat the special. And the last one who knows the truth. It was never about the food. It was about feeding the world to something worse. One bite at a time. But the hunger remains.